Good afternoon, everybody. This is the AUSmerica podcast. We're going to be here live for about an hour, and I want a special guest. Thank Arne Hansen for coming down here to have a good chat with us. Thank you, Arne.
Yeah, news certainly does get around, doesn't it?
Hello, people of the world.
3 or 4 hot tips a month.
There was a firefight! Wow! It doesn't build character, it reveals it.
F&A, Cotton, F&A.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
How are you?
Thanks, Dan. Good to talk to you again. It has been a long time, hasn't it?
It's been, what, 3 or 4 years or so, hasn't it? Or something like that? Something crazy?
Since we've had a good chat? Yeah, that's about right, yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, I've got, like, a lot of questions to ask you. I mean, first of all, what? Well, first of all, I mean, if I can say is, what the hell have you been up to? Actually, if I can just kind of begin with that. I mean, it seems like you're always doing so much, and there's so much always going on. Yeah.
I started up my own business probably about 3.5 years ago. It was a consultancy business working in the renewable energy space and sustainability. So that's been quite an eye-opener, and it's led me down a lot of interesting paths, working for a lot of interesting people. So
why did you decide that? Yeah. Why did you decide, like, out of all the things, because I know you're a pretty smart guy and you've done a lot of things as well. Like, what made you decide, all right, renewables is what I want to go into? Was it just money, or was it just the passion, or was it just opportunity?
Well, it's not really directly renewables, I suppose, is one thing. I mean, my whole sort of career's really been about trying to get rid of duplication, waste, and the old way of doing things in the favour of a digital way of doing things. So my whole career's been typified by this. I guess, right from the beginning, I started trying to get rid of analog video systems in buildings, and these ridiculous, overly complicated solutions, to try and just simplify it down to an optic fibre cable or something like that. So there's that side of sustainability, which is just trying to reduce materials and trying to simplify things, reduce complexity. Which has been a major part of what I've been trying to do. But that then has led into, I suppose, getting data from buildings, and this is another big part of what I do as well. So you might have heard of things called like smart cities or Internet of Things, IoT. It's a big sort of upcoming topic, at the moment. Very trendy.
It's huge. Every company, Apple, Microsoft's trying to jump on board that. But here's a question for you, though. Like, when was the first time that you realized that you were into this? Like making things more efficient? Did you just kind of grow up with that, or did you just kind of wake up one day and go, you know what, this shit's just not working?
I guess I've always been interested in computers, and I've seen what computers can do from an early stage. So I was an early adopter of MP3s and stuff like that in the early 90s, and stuff like this, right? And so you're looking at this sort of I can play an MP3 file from one side of the house to the other over a network, and you're comparing that to what the commercially available systems, and they have 15 cables and this big $10,000 switching thing, and so the solutions just didn't sort of match up. You know what I mean? So I've always been trying to find a way to get that kind of level of efficiency and flexibility into the building space. So it started with AV, and then it's just progressed into all sorts of other levels of technologies to the point now that I work with and specify pretty much any technology that goes into a building for a developer. So we come at it from a top-down approach. So we look at it from, well, what data do they need to get? So what do they want to produce in reports? What do they need to do in order to tune their building? So they might want to see, performance statistics on the building in real time, so they can find anomalies and things like that and tune them out. And that saves them money and saves, obviously, saves the environment as a consequence. So it's sort of, the two things are tied together. Sustainability, the real drive there is money with business. I mean, that's just the reality, right? But it's a good match. We've got sustainability, and we've got saving money in the same breath. So it's a win-win.
Run us through, in layman's terms, because obviously I don't know much about this kind of. I mean, I know about solar, but in terms of what you do is a very more complex thing. Can you run us through just in the layman terms of what so you would go approach a business, say, hey, I can turn your building into a renewable, more efficient, and then like, how does that process even start? I mean, wouldn't you have to look at everything in the building and evaluate and take 6 months and all that? I mean, it sounds like a really big thing.
Well, we're coming at, I mean, yes, so you can get caught in the weeds very quickly when you start doing this sort of stuff. So, I mean, you know, I'm sitting at, okay, there's multiple levels that occur here. So I'm really consulting to the business. So that's usually the head of technology, the innovation officer, or sustainability and governance team. So they're right sort of sitting at the top of the organisations. So some of the bigger clients I've worked with are sort of, $25 to $30 billion Australian of property. Yeah.
Or like government buildings, or just like residential?
It's been a mix actually of everything. So I've worked on everything from the Coca-Cola building, the Coca-Cola factory in Sydney, to a shopping centre trust where they've got about 100 shopping centres across Australia.
Wants to kind of be a part of this kind of thing. Is that what you're kind of saying? Like everybody's pretty keen.
Well, everyone talks a lot about Internet of Things and so on and so forth, but it's really a lot of, frankly, there's a lot of vaporware out there, and there's a lot of people that sort of pretend that they know what they're doing. The reality, like any new industry, you get a lot of cowboys in the industry. So, I mean, the renewable industry and the renewable energy sector has gone through that, and it's been subject to its sort of self-regulation and so on, to bring up standards of installers and standards of work. But when you're dealing with a brand new sort of bleeding edge sector, I suppose it can be a bit, cowboyish. So, I mean, I've got a really long pedigree of working on these sort of projects.
How many years now are you going on doing this? What, like 4?
I've worked in this. I've run my own business for 4 years, but I've worked in this sector pretty much my whole life.
Yeah, your whole life? I don't remember.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was so drunk and high when you told me. I'm sorry. At those parties that day, you're all telling me, like, yeah, man, I'm listening. I'm here. What is like the biggest problem that you face in terms of like renewables and so forth? So say you approach a building and they want all their panels and redone energy. Like, what is the biggest problem that you're like, I really hope that this does not come up again and screw me? Like, what is the biggest thing that you find in Australia?
Australia is actually pretty good. I'll just say out front, Australia is pretty good. I think internationally we stand pretty well in terms of adoption of technology and being fairly flexible and adaptable to it. So we are quite good on that level. But that said, the issues that I always face are always to do with people trying to introduce complexity, and the other one is people trying to own data. So third-party vendors. Oh yeah, this is the big thing now. So it's called the data wars. I'm going to term it the data wars. Let's just call it that. So,
or what's this about?
Okay, so what corporations have realised, and any organisation really worth its salt, is realised that data is king. Data is everything. Like data can tell them everything about their business. So we're putting in systems that are not just about renewable energy and sustainability. We're putting in things to track people walking through shopping centres. We're putting in things that can do deep packet inspection analysis on their packets, so that you can produce a heat map basically of where people walk within a shopping centre, and then you can tie that, to social media accounts, and then you can tie that to social media users, and then you can start to work out some pretty amazing stuff from a marketing perspective. So you're doing people counting at a very raw level, so you're just counting the number of people in and out of a shopping centre or something like that. But then at a higher level, Cisco have developed this technology so you can track people, even if they're just, all you need is a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth to be on a phone, and that's it. And then that's all they require. And then you can walk through a shopping centre and then they can track you. So this is great for the shopping centre owner, of course, because then they can work out, well, what section of the shopping centre, for example, should have a higher lease than another section of the shopping centre based on the amount of footfall.
Is that like how it works? So like say one end has like a Victoria's Secret, one end has like a Dollar Tree, and so he can sit back and judge which has more traffic and then up the rent, you're saying, on the Dollar Tree if it's not going up. They can actually do that? That's legalized?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because I can go, well, this section, this area of the shopping shopping centre for whatever reason, the entrances, the mixes of shops that are here, where the location of the food court is, whatever, means that this section of the shopping centre has double the amount of footfall than a section upstairs. So they can go, well, this area is then worth more money, justifiably, I think. But they use obviously that data, and they can do all sorts of interesting things with marketing. So they can track. You've probably heard of things like called Gartner demographic data. I don't know if you've heard that. That's basically where they come up with these crazy sort of names for people. They segment society into, I don't know, aspirational something or other, and upcoming professional and young professional and older, academics, or they come up with all these little names and then paint a map with all these different sort of colours to work out, what type of people live there. And then, of course, what a shopping centre will do is then it will have 10 or 15 different marketing campaigns that will appeal to those different demographics. So they'll have, the young mums will want to see stuff about, kids and baby stuff, whereas the older people will want to see discounts on, I don't know, Spam or whatever they eat. Yeah.
Facebook and Twitter and so forth, but I mean, does it actually work though? I mean, do you think it does actually work in terms of like the shopping malls? Like, do you think that is actually effective?
Well, what these guys are doing really is they're trying to compete with Amazon. So Amazon is a purely digital play, and all they are doing is digital data and capturing information and data about their customers, and then using that in order to inform them on how to increase their profits and revenue. So the same thing applies to a shopping centre in reality, right? So they're basically just trying to compete. They're trying to extract the same kind of information that an Amazon has at its disposal, just by nature, just because Amazon is what it is, So that's the play, and what they're trying to do is this thing called customer activation. So they're trying to customer activation is basically where you engage a customer like in the shopping centre, and they might engage in terms of downloading an application, or they might put the kids into the childcare section of the shopping centre or whatever. It doesn't matter. Customer activation just means that they're engaging and that it's a sort of part of a community. So this is the big thing now, customer activation.
It's creepy. It sounds like a Nazi, like no. Well, all those.
Well, you're a bit of a movie buff, so you remember Minority Report? Yeah. Okay, so you remember I don't know, Tom Cruise, I can't remember the name of the character, but Tom Cruise walking through a shopping mall, and yeah, everybody, yeah, he's walking through the shopping mall, and all of the advertising, there's cameras everywhere, and they pick up who he is, and then there's, hey, whatever your name is, buy this, hey, da-da-da. And so it's all targeted advertising. So you can bet your bottom dollar that within 5 years, they're going to be using information that they're gathering from the smartphones, social media, and so on and so forth, facial recognition, in order to target advertising to people as they're walking through the shopping centre. So you're basically then getting, Google AdWords like you do in Google in real life. Like, the advertising is targeted in the same way that Google is targeting advertising at customers. So this is the way that bricks and mortar retailers think that they can then compete with the Amazons of the world. So they're creating a customer experience, they're drawing people in, they're enriching, they're employing exactly the same methods, but in a real world. So it's going to be an interesting sort of 5 years.
Are you saying that you do engage in that kind of business activities, or are you saying you don't like if a business has let's collect data, are you like, let's do it, or are you an anti-guy, or like, what do you, in terms of how do you approach business in terms of your beliefs?
Oh, what do I believe about that stuff? Well, look, I think, you can think it's...
You're still going to do it, right?
Well, yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, as I say, I think you can... You're right? Got the beer there. Cheers. Oh, we've got the Australian beer and the American beer, by the way. And I have to say, Dan's a bad influence because, he's making me drink at 10 a.m. But Sunday. But you're proving that it's beer o'clock anywhere in the world at some time of the day. So, I'm only just being sociable. So,
12, it's the weekend, it's fine. Like, also, one thing as well, to completely off topic, let's let's get your thoughts on this. What's your thoughts on alcoholism in terms of like Australia and other countries and so forth? Because I personally find that, you know, alcoholism has a very different definition here than what it does in Australia. Like, you know, I mean, sure, it's a big drinking culture over there, but it seems like over here it is as well. It's a huge thing, but there's also kind of a you know, some people would think of an Aussie and their drinking habits as an alcoholic, but yet it seems like as a country, Australia doesn't really see it that way. But in America, it's kind of teetering on this line of, yeah. How do you feel about that?
I think it's probably worth comparing ourselves to Europe. In some ways, more than it is between ourselves. I think there's a lot of similarities between the US and Australia in culture and the way we approach drinking. So, like, you know, if you go to Italy, right, for example, you know, it's really frowned upon to get drunk.
Really? I thought it was. Oh, am I thinking of France? I'm thinking of France. Well, yeah, really. Yeah, really. Well,
you know, to actually lose control, like, that's seen as being. Yeah, like people just sort of are like, "What are you doing?" You know? Yeah. That's kind of the reaction. I mean,
Roger, thank you for telling me that. You just changed my life.
Well, if you want cheap booze, move to Spain. You know, there you can buy a bottle of vodka for €15. 10 euro, 15 euro. Yeah.
Isn't the euro supposed to be like completely gone now as well? Like isn't that supposed to be completely dead now? Like how come it's still?
What was that, sorry?
The euro, like, isn't the euro supposed to be gone with the whole Brexit thing or something like that? Isn't that supposed to be?
Oh. No, just Britain's leaving, but who cares?
God News, though, dude, they broadcast the shit out of it, and there is debates and arguments, and I'll be honest, it's easy to get swept up in watching it. It's easy to be like, because it's such a, Theresa May said this comment, and this triggered this, and then this triggered that, and then there's some old dude being like, well, I don't agree, and you're like, ooh, you know, I mean.
Well, I don't know about you, but I mean, I don't really get much of my news off air. I mean,
get your news. Tell us, where do you go to get it?
I get almost all my news on YouTube or on Twitter or.
Yeah, but aren't you afraid about that?
Well,
CNN's kind of fun to
here in Australia, it's just like Fox News. I mean, it's just like basically a mouthpiece for the right wing to get up and talk about whatever they want to talk about.
Yeah,
That's pretty much all it is.
Condense their stories down. You got to admit that with Sky News, they don't crap on for ages unless it's to do with Theresa May. Like, they do not crap on Trump. Can come on and say crap. They cover it. They move on to the next thing.
Mm. Oh, look, I watch it. I mean, it's very, it's almost like magazine news. It's so light, and it doesn't really cover much of the world.
Really? Come on. Well.
No, it's insipid. It's just insipid. It's just nothing. It's light, fluffy, you know. And honestly, it's not. They're not doing anything like. I mean, there are some current affairs shows on the ABC that do something like 7:30 Report does something good. Four Corners, it's been breaking some really interesting news.
Recently, absolutely wonderful. Yeah, Four Corners has been the shit. Yeah.
You know, and you've got there's exactly the same equivalents in America. I mean, you know, you've got the same stuff over there. You've got, you know, PBS has got obviously far more reputable reporting than a lot of the other.
It's supposed to be closed by now, wasn't it?
What was that, sorry?
Well, Trump said, about a year ago that PBS was going to be closed, but it hasn't.
Well, I think they were pulling taxpayer funding for it, but I think PBS was still trying to get funding from corporate donors and so on, wasn't it? Like NPR. NPR is the same. It's basically just funded by corporations now.
But I mean, it's funny to see that PBS is still around when, like, you know, they sold off Sesame Street to like HBO and so forth, and look, their content is still great. I mean, their online apps over here are pretty empty, but in terms of if you were to tune into the channel, there is a lot of great content there. But Trump did say it was going to close the entire office, so it's very odd to see that it's still kicking. But
Well, I mean, then you guys are left with what? CBS and MSNBC. I mean, yeah, geez, what Megan Kelly on MSNBC. Let's get excited about that for like a nanosecond.
Very odd way. It feels like It feels honestly every time Megan Kelly shows up, it feels like is this real?
Did you see her attack on Jane Fonda the other day?
I did, and then I thought to myself, man, we really are focusing on the most petty fucking shit at the moment. We are focusing
it's
on
unbelievable.
the most ridiculous, like there's people raping people in Hollywood, and we're like, I don't like their hair, and it offends me, and it's like, oh my god, and then
Well, let's just pause for a second. You've got your commander-in-chief has been accused by 16 women of sexual abuse.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Now, I'll have been warned that a lot of people were like, don't bring up politics, but I was like, God. I think so. Here's a big question. If I can get your kind of bias personified, that's not the right.
My biased view.
Can I get your perspective, your own emotional perspective, a non-fact-based perspective on how Australia actually views America in this current state of time? Like what have you seen, witnessed day to day in your beer drinking and the going out in business? Like, how does, if you were to give us a quick little snapshot, how do you think the country would be?
Well,
and beach.
I think we. Yeah, no, that's fine. I think we feel for you guys. Like, you know, like I mean, I think we but then not the other way around. Yeah, no, we I think pretty universally, I think the world thinks that you've elected a total fool. You know, very dangerous fool at that. But I mean, what can you do? I mean, you know, you've got a gerrymandered electoral system. You've got you know, the Republicans win a state race and then they just gerrymander the seats after a census. So you've got the craziest looking electoral boundaries. And then, of course, you know, the Democrats have lost all of the House races. I mean, you know, but then they've got look at the people that are in the Democratic Party, leading the Democratic Party. You've got, you know, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. I mean,
scraping the bottom of the barrel. But I mean, I read an article the other day saying that they were talking about how this new Trump movement has caused more people to start running in government. It's caused more young people and more aspiring people to go and run in the government. However, that's not exactly the best way to do it, because it should be one person per town, and then they promote. They're focusing more on themselves than actually. But I mean,
well, what I saw an interesting one the other day, Dan. I saw that in the years before Trump became president, there was 9. Emily's List. You know, Emily's List is like a women's advocacy organization to get women elected.
Can you repeat that? What was that?
Emily's List. It's a political organisation, like a women's group to try and basically get women involved in politics and get them elected, to try and get a 50-50 balance. Anyway, this is the thing. So anyway, so Emily's List basically funds women and helps women get elected, pretty much. Yeah, so in the US. And so in the years up to Trump, 900 women applied to Emily's List to get funding. And in the year after Trump got elected, there were 29,000. So it went from 900, almost 1,000, to 29,000 people seeking assistance from Emily's List. So that's women, just women, getting involved in the electoral process, young women at that. So that's happened since Trump, yeah. So, you know, Trump might have been one of the best things that could have happened to the progressive side of politics in the US in some respects. So you have to look at the positives.
Well, it's really funny you bring that up, is because like I don't know, I will watch Hollywood news a whole lot, and it's interesting to see how many, with this whole cult happening in Hollywood, we're seeing a lot more females being put back into power in Hollywood. Like a great example is for those who do not know, The Walking Dead is now headed by a female now, which it originally was assisting. So now, and it's funny that they've said that, you know, they're going to go through and fix the show, and there's a whole bunch of other companies being purchased. And in terms of like the marijuana industry as well, to a large portion is being owned by females. So it does seem like, you know, and then in terms of, you know, film and cinema, I mean, we are getting very feminist pro films right now. I mean, it's crazy, but it does seem like because we didn't have a female as a president, we kind of have to take one more so in the culture now, which is probably good. It's a good thing. And I mean, let's face it, I mean, Greta Gerwig's the only female director nominated for an Oscar this year, and there was other directors, like there was like Patty Jenkins did Wonder Woman. It made $1 billion, not nominated. I mean, fair enough, but what she did was something incredible. She turned something stupid and old into something great and exciting to watch in a cliche superhero world, but not a single nomination? Really? I mean, but yet Greta Gerwig, for a story that is about her own life in high school, it seems like we are kind of neglecting females and very male. It seems like, you know, the whole Trump thing kind of opened this Pandora's box of male versus female and how much males do actually can control it.
But I mean, I think ultimately it comes down to money, doesn't it? I mean, men have been in charge of the finances in Hollywood and have been forever. And so, I mean, what are they going to fund? They're going to fund films that's more likely to appeal to a man. I mean, that's just you know. Yeah, but I think that I think you know, coming back to where we're at, personally, how do I feel about, you know, things like data collection and stuff? I guess I think, I mean, you know, I can see the privacy issues here, and I think there's, you know, there are some problems with it. But then I think, you know, what's interesting about it is it's like the bricks and mortar are using they're using the precedent set by the Amazons in order to, like, basically justify this sort of activity, you know,
and to get revenue. And I mean, look, you are right, because I mean, let's face it, we live in a world now where the Apple and Microsoft CEOs are no longer the most earning people in the world. It's the guy who owns Amazon, isn't it? Jeff Bezos?
Jeff Bezos is worth $100 billion.
Man, I tell you what, who would have? I didn't see that coming. And I mean, it goes to show. And I mean, but I mean, isn't that kind of the future, though? I mean, isn't everything? I mean, wouldn't that kind of? I mean, in a utopian bullshit rose-colored glasses society, if you could order anything, have it delivered, not go anywhere, not be forced to drive, and everything's automated and so forth, wouldn't that actually be a form of utopia?
A utopia that's owned by Jeff Bezos. I mean, I think the problem here is that Jeff Bezos owns roughly 1/3 of American retail sales at the moment. Something like that is run through Amazon. Yeah, it's crazy. And you think Amazon's bought Whole Foods, and it's bought, it's, you know.
Bro. Whole Foods was expensive as shit. You saw South Park when the whole take
Yeah, of course. But no, my point is that they're expanding. They just did that checkoutless shopping center in Seattle last week. They launched that. Did you see that? They've got sensors all the way through the all through the supermarket. So they've got cameras everywhere, and people use their phones. They you walk into when you walk in, you've got an app on your phone, and you put it onto a turnstile, and you get let into the store. And then throughout, when you're shopping, there's all these cameras and sensors everywhere that detect when you pick something up, and then you just walk out. Yeah, so there's no checkout, there's no anything like that.
This is the problem. See here, like, a part of me goes, like, you know, this is bullshit. That's, you know, a totalitarian society. But then the other part kicks in, the stuttering part of me, and says, God, after a long day at work of talking all day long and getting food, that actually sounds like a very painless procedure to actually go into a store. I don't have to interact with people, to talk to the checkout chick and say, hey, how's things after a long day of blah, 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 because, you know, it takes a lot. But in the same way, it's also taking the humanity aspect out. But I'll be honest, if there's a store that is automated, I will go to that store. Just because it's the break.
Well, what's interesting about it, though, is that Amazon has come from being purely online, and now they're making these plays back into bricks and mortar. So they've cemented themselves a position in terms of distribution, their warehousing and their automation processes and their data acquisition and the harvesting of the data that they're doing. And they're taking that business model and just wrapping that in a bubble and bricks and mortar sort of environment. So what I'm saying, or what I'm doing at the moment is basically giving the ability, or trying to give the ability to uplift an existing shopping centre or a new shopping centre or whatever the environment is, in order to be able to compete with that sort of operation. So I mean, Amazon just opened here in Australia only 3 months ago, less than that.
I did not know that. I was going to be asking you that next thing. So what's the like they opened a corporate office and began expansion, or what?
Well, they've opened up a distribution hub in Victoria, so they've got a full distribution hub set up there. Now. There are some differences though between Australia and America in terms of what the impact of what Amazon I think will be. Okay, so I think Amazon. Well, I think so. America had overinvested very heavily in its shopping centres through the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and America had more shopping centres per capita than like anywhere in the world by a factor of 2 or 3 or something ridiculous. Yeah, so I think Amazon was competing against basically very, very old building stock that had no data acquisition, no smart intelligence, anything, and they were competing against those kind of operations, and it wasn't very hard for them to beat them. In Australia, we've had these big shopping centre groups like Westfields, which I think's made a pretty big play in America, and they've just been.
Cut you off there, but who owns Westfield again? Can you remind who?
Frank Lowy used to own it. So Frank Lowy was an Australian businessman, but now it's been bought by a European conglomerate, and they paid, I think it was about 35 billion or something for it, for Westfield. Yeah, 35 or 40 billion, something like that. Yep, European property trust bought it. Yep, so they sold it off to Europe. But anyway, Westfield is just an example of an Australian property trust that has spread across the globe. So they've got shopping centres in America and in Europe. And the reason why they were successful is because they were always at the cutting edge of technology. So they were always investing in technology and trying to be at the forefront. And what that meant is that their operational costs were a lot lower than their competitors, and that they could track marketing campaigns and see the results and basically get a better return on their investment, significantly better return on their investment than their competitors. So there's been shopping centre groups that have been driven out of business in Australia, and so I think we've already seen sort of an attrition of the weak has already sort of happened here. Whereas in America, Amazon came in, disrupted, and just crashed everything. Or crashed a big part of that sector.
Wait, stop there. I got to cut you off there. First of all, is Stockland still a...
Stockland? Yeah. Stockland are a pretty big property trust in Australia. So they do... Well, Westfields is a property trust as well. So, I mean, they own all that property. So it's a fund that you can invest in that owns shopping centres, basically. Yeah.
Carry on, sir. Tell me more. So wait. So is this like a? It sounds all terrifying. So, do you think that we're gonna end up in like a time in history when we don't have retail spaces anymore and everything is online?
No, I don't think so.
Really?
I'm pretty confident that, I think ultimately there will be things that you won't want to buy online.
Like what? Like
clothes, shoes, I don't know, food possibly, I think is one of those things. People like to pick up and look and experience, and so this is what the shopping centres are trying to do. They're trying to make that they're trying to make shopping not a chore. Because I mean, I personally
is a
don't
chore.
like shopping, right?
Yeah, same.
But I mean, you know, but you know too that if you go to one shopping centre, the experience can be a lot worse than another shopping centre.
Well, it all depends on price and customer service.
What stores are there, and you know, so you know, like you know, there'll be a shopping centre that might appeal to you because there's a couple of stores that you like, so you don't mind shopping if you can go to that shopping centre. So it's about the mix of shops. It's about, you know. So anyway, so it's about trying to basically make an attractive place that you want to go to, and they're trying to make them the centre of the community. So they're trying to make them like the you know, the place where a community gets together and, you know, all this sort of stuff. So they're trying to wrap it in some sort of social wrapping as well.
All right, well,
which makes sense.
Were you ever a mall rat as a kid? Have a 2-year phase as a 16-year-old in high school as a mall rat. I would go to malls with my friends and we would hang out there, and it lasted probably 2 years. But I'll tell you what, looking back, that part of my life was boring as fuck.
Well, I mean, you're 14, right? You don't really know very much, so you know, you think it's cool to hang out in a shopping centre, and then you realise later that was
Kevin Smith, man, Kevin Smith. So tell me this here. I mean, so the big question is like, I worked in solar for a long time, and one time, you know, eventually the whole solar thing, it got canceled. The rec price, the STCs all got changed. What is the impact from that to what's happening now? Because in my mind, in my basic level of just watching the news, I would think it was completely dead over there. And then you're the one actually making business plan off of it and actually doing well. But is it solar, or is that just a different thing?
Well, it's really interesting that what's going on here in Australia, because we've had, let's put it this way, our electricity price is about 35 cents a kilowatt hour. In America, it's somewhere between 3 to 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So we're paying anywhere between 3 to 10 times as much for our electricity than you are in America.
Yeah, but I thought that they were supposed to equalize. I mean, when I worked in solar, I was always preached that they were supposed to be equal. You're telling me that they're actually more expensive now?
We've had an enormous increase in electricity costs in Australia. Enormous. Why? Policy failure, pretty much.
I know that you sold off all your grids to America and China and Korea or something, right? Is that?
Yeah. Where we leased off some of them and we sold some. So Australia's got this sort of crazy system, like. Well, okay. So Australia's kind of been set up like America in some ways, right? So the weaknesses of America, like with the state governments, so we have this sort of
like an Enron kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, so we've got basically so originally the way it worked is that, I'm pretty sure this is the way it works in America. The municipal governments or the city governments were built and owned the electricity networks.
Yeah. Well, that's the concept. That was the plan. Yeah. That's the concept. Yeah.
So the same thing happened here in Australia. So we had generation that was done local to the community. So you had, a community would have a power station in it. A small power station, and then it would distribute the electricity to its residents locally. And so it's called decentralized generation and distribution. So, and then what Australia did, and what America did and Australia did at the same time, pretty much in the 50s, 60s, and so on, was to build out a national grid, or not a national grid in the case of America, but build out the grids and interconnect different cities and so on more. So, and part of that, what happened in Australia was the state governments came along and acquired all of the electricity networks off the councils and municipal governments. So they just came along and compulsorily took them off them. And that happened across Australia around the same time, around the 50s and 60s. And then they went ahead and built these big centralized. So the justification for this, by the way, was that they were going to build big, massive, coal-fired power stations that were more efficient, and they were going to centralize it all. Okay. So this was the big plan.
We'll make it great again. We'll make coal great again.
We'll make coal great again, yeah. And there's a bit of a movement of that in Australia too. So we've got we like America have politicians that are bought off by.
Haven't you learned anything?
And we like America have politicians that are bought off by corporations and interest groups. I mean, that's something that Australia and America really have a lot in common.
So go on. So they created that kind of structure. Then when did it go to Shitsville? Like, when did everything become a free-for-all?
Well, I mean, you know, a coal-fired power station, like a nuclear power station, like anything, has a lifespan, right? So, you know,
everybody forgets that. Like, we'll be good forever. Oh, it's like 60 years, and
no. Well, 40 years is generally the rule. So 40 to 50, 40 years. Yeah.
So at least 40 years, 40 to 50 years.
Well, a coal power station, 40 years, yeah. 50 years if you're lucky, and if you do any more than that, then it's really just rebuilding it and doing it again anyway. So
that sounds like a waste of fucking yeah.
Well, it costs an awful lot of money, and it takes a long time to build them. But the thing is, okay, so Australia did all this big build of power stations all around the same kind of time. So of course now we have a whole bunch of power stations that are coming to their retirement date. So all at the same time. And what's more, they're becoming more and more unreliable. So, you know, we've basically got a government here, which is like yours in America, which is saying that, oh no, we need to build more coal-fired power stations, and we need to dig up more coal, and we need to, you know, whatever. And everyone in the community is saying, no, we need to build more solar, we need to build more renewables, so on and so forth. So this is the crazy thing. So we've got this government which is basically bought and owned by the Minerals Council, which is the peak mining lobby in Australia, saying to the government, no, you need to follow this path. And you know, which is the same in America. So you've got, you know, Trump saying that he's going to open up the coal mines, and of course I think in his version of cleaning coal was actually to scrub it. Oh shit, that's what he said. Clean coal.
I watched it and I cried. I cried for my country.
But the thing is too is that these coal-fired power stations are also very unreliable in the heat. So when it gets hot in Australia, everyone turns their air conditioner on. Same in America, I'm sure. And there's a big peak load, and you know we get this big, massive peak of electricity demand, and the coal-fired power stations can't. They trip in the heat. So if it's hot, they don't like it, and they're not reliable. So what happened just last week was I don't know if you're aware that, and you know, for the benefit of your listeners, so Elon Musk was offered a challenge by the Australian government by the South Australian government, which is a state government, to build a 100 megawatt hour battery in 100 days, and he did it. He did it in 90, I think was the date. Now, so when they went and did testing on that, so that they were due to open it. Sorry?
Well, because I read an article saying that it actually wasn't efficient.
Well, no, it isn't efficient. That's true. You do lose by nature when you're storing electricity. You do lose something, right? So same with hydro plants. When you pump water uphill and then you run it downhill at night, you lose electricity. Ultimately, there's a loss there. That's true. But on the day prior to
what?
Well, it's not a perpetual energy or perpetual motion machine. You can't pump water uphill for example, this is what hydro stations do. They pump water uphill when they've got plenty of electricity, and then they run it downhill and generate electricity when they've got peak demand. So they're storing electricity and then they're generating electricity. So the same thing is true with a battery. You lose a bit of power. There's a bit of loss, but 5 to 10%. Something like that you lose when you're transferring electricity from AC to DC and back and so on. Anyway, but the point is that on the day before they were due to open this battery, the electricity market regulator in Australia asked them to provide a bunch of power into the market because they had a big peak load demand day. So it was a hot day, and they knew that they were going to have to step up. So on day -1, that battery had already proved its worth. So before they even opened it, that it had come in and saved the grid from a brownout event. So so that battery is quite remarkable. And we also had another event just last week where a big brown coal-fired generator in Victoria, one of the biggest ones down there, tripped. One of the generators tripped, and once they trip, it takes ages to get them up and running again. And then there's this sort of lag. So what they'll do then is they'll fire up gas-fired generators. So they'll just fire up a whole bunch of gas-fired plants to fill in the gap. Yeah. So coal's cheaper, so they run that. And then if the coal trips, then they'll fire up all the gas-fired generators. But that takes about 10 minutes to do that. So they've got to fire them up and and jet sync them up and everything. Now, so this is where the battery comes in. The battery responded. The battery in South Australia responded to the power station failure in 30 milliseconds. It come on like that and was dumping power back into the grid. Sorry?
So you're saying that Muska's project actually was faster, quicker than what coal and all the other stuff is. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the point of what Tesla's battery storage and any form of energy storage can do is that when you're looking at the daily demand, so the daily demand might start off at midnight and it will start off low because no one's using power, and then at the start of the day it'll pick up like this, and then it will da-da-da-da-da, and then it might be a really hot day and everyone decides to turn their air conditioner on, and you get this big spike right here, right, and then it goes back down, and so that's the sort of what you call an energy profile, energy curve. So what you want to do is you want to try and filter out these big spikes. So what the Tesla battery can do is it can take out these big peaking bits, right? All of the peaks and peaks on the chart. It can take all of them out, can knock all that off. And what that means is that they don't have to run another generator. So the generator can just go offline because the generator is not that. Yeah, because when they run an electricity network, they typically will run 5 to 10% over capacity. So they're generating more than is actually being used, and they have a buffer. Yeah, they have a buffer there of a certain percentage. All networks. Yeah, all networks. Otherwise, they'd fall over all the time. So they have synchronization, stability, and frequency control measures, and all sorts of different things. And in order to keep that going, you need to have a certain overhead. Yeah, synchronicity. Yeah. Anyway, so all of that basically means is that battery has saved the grid in Australia multiple times already. So it's the world's biggest battery, the world's biggest battery storage. So now, of course, some of the other state governments in Australia are looking at it, and it's been a bit of a it's proven its worth already. Basically, it's the long and short of it.
So explain, why the hell don't we have solar panels on every house in Australia then? If this is all working, it's all perfect, it's all great, why the hell don't we have panels on every house and renewable energy schemes everywhere? What's going on? It's
politics. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just politics. So we've been, 85% of our power in Australia is still generated by coal.
Really? 85%? No
yeah.
Shit. And
85%.
Hold on, though. Is that Australia's coal or somebody else's coal?
No, it's Australia's coal. Yeah, we're a net exporter of coal, so we only burn our coal. We don't import coal. Yeah.
Listening, what is it that Australia officially exports to the rest of the world? Can I get an Aussie's opinion on that as opposed to a combo person? What does Australia export to the planet?
Essentially a lot of minerals. So we're a big giant mine and quarry for the rest of the world. That's pretty much. So our biggest companies are BHP Billiton and Rio Tinto, and which are big, top 10 global corporations. So we're a big exporter of iron ore, coal, uranium, but also. We're massive uranium
producers. Where the hell did we get the uranium from? Uranium? Yeah.
Yeah. We're big nuclear exporter. Yeah, but we don't actually. So we have only one reactor ourselves, so we don't actually produce electricity using nuclear or anything like that in Australia. But we do export a lot of uranium. In addition to that, we export a lot of commodities. Farming commodities. So wheat and sugar and things like that. So I mean, so there's that side of the economy, the primary producing sector side of the economy. But Australia is also very good at R&D and research, and we are quite good at exporting technologies and getting return on them. So we're using Australian technology right now. We're using Wi-Fi.
Wait a second. Wi-Fi is Australian. Is that what you're saying? Wi-Fi is Australian.
Wi-Fi was developed by the Commonwealth Scientific Industrial Research Organisation, or CSIRO.
That sounds like a fake news. No, I'm kidding. I'm the CSIRO.
You can look it up all you like. Yeah, no, it's an Australian invention. So Australia is very good at science and research and development as well. So we do have a lot of export of IP, basically intellectual property. I think that's another thing.
Property, I believe.
And then I suppose the other probably bigger exporter earner is the services industry. So we're quite a big finance and education and exporter as well.
Right. So back to the question of why the hell don't we have solar panels on every freaking house in the country? Why? If it works, what the hell?
Okay, so the biggest problem. Okay, so I'm actually just going through this dilemma myself right now, and
it makes no sense. It feels like we're all taking crazy pills. It feels like we're literally all. I worked in the industry, and they worked fine. They offset bills. What the hell happened? The technology
well, look,
works.
I mean, yeah, no, that's right. I mean, I think. Coming back to the coal and nuclear and solar, wind, battery argument, the economics are really clear now. So the economics of renewables easily outweigh that of coal and nuclear. So you're not going to find a private sector investor. Yeah, you're not going to find a private sector investor these days who's going to invest in coal. So this has been a big problem in Australia. We've had the government say, basically trying to not force, but they're trying to put out there that, private sector should be building coal-fired power stations. And this is what they think private sector should be doing. And the private sector doesn't want to touch it with a 10-foot barge pole. They're not interested at all. No, not interested. No, private money will not touch it because they know that it's a dead duck. They know that coal is going to be more expensive going forward. It's not cheaper. It's got an increase in cost. You've got to transport coal to from a mine to a power plant. Gives me
such hope.
Versus actually having a passive income earner effectively in a solar farm.
Yeah. Exactly right.
So it just makes a lot more sense. So it's cheaper now to do that now. So in terms of households, the big problem with households is that you've got, again, in Australia, I don't know exactly what it's like in America, but in Australia, literally one half of our electricity bill is just in the network. So in actually the poles and wires to transfer the electricity to your house.
Yeah,
half of your electricity bill is just in the poles and the wires. So I would be surprised if it's not a similar sort of thing in America. So what that means is that if you're trying to generate electricity and then sell it back into the grid in order to offset your electricity and make some income, it means that what they call a feed-in tariff can only be that of what, say, for example, a coal-fired generator is getting paid. So the coal-fired generator is pumping electricity in at 9 cents a kilowatt hour or 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So why would the electricity retailer buy electricity off you for more than that? Do you know what I mean? So and then we're paying these huge exorbitant prices, but that's actually just to pay for the grid. So here's the thing, right? So in Australia, before I turn the light on in the morning, before I use one tiny ounce of electricity, I've already paid $1.50 in a network fee. So $1.50 a day to be connected to the grid. So I'm not sure what it costs in America, but there's always these daily connection fees. Yeah, daily connection fees. Yeah, so daily connection fees really a bit of, makes it difficult for me to justify. So, but if you take $1.50 a day, it's $550 a year. It's $550 a year before you use electricity to be connected to the grid.
So just to be allowed onto the grid, it's what? What?
Yeah, it's $550 a year just to be connected to the grid, right? Okay.
What a privilege! What a privilege that we are.
I know, and for that you get. Well, I was going to say, and for that you get plenty of brownouts and blackouts along the way too. So you don't even get a reliable electricity source. But anyway, so what I'm going to do. I've just last week, funnily enough, I put out a request for price for my own house. To put a 6 kilowatt system and a 10 kilowatt hour battery storage in there too. So,
or what's the price on that? A 10 kilowatt.
I don't know,
dude. That's fucking massive. It's a massive
10 kilowatt hour battery. Yeah.
It's fucking huge.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So, so here's the thing, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to.
The massive
Sorry?
system. Like, yes, right.
Oh, 10 kilowatt hour batteries are quite small now. Like you can, if you want to have a look, LG make one called the RESU, or RESU, or whatever they want to call it. And you just screw it to the side of a wall. It's just a small, looks like a suitcase. You just screw it to the side of a wall.
To be true though, that really does sound too easy.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to see what the net result of this is. I want to see what the capability is to actually go off grid with this system. So, is it feasible to actually go off grid? Now, but here's the thing, right? So if I go off grid, like let's just say that it covers 90% of my energy needs, this system that I'm going to get. I can go and buy I can go and buy myself a diesel generator for $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah.
With a remote trigger off my system, so it automatically turns the generator on when it needs to go on.
Yeah.
And then $550 a year, so I've paid that off in 4 years. So economically, what I'm trying to get at, economically, right? It now makes sense for the first time. This is about the first time that it now makes sense. If you have the money, if you have the capital, it makes sense to try and get offline and off grid and not be connected to the utility.
Yeah, but
so that's what I'll be seeking to do this year. I'll be trying to disconnect.
It kind of borderline illegal though? Like I do recall it being kind of a little bit illegal when if you're off grid, because the government's like, we want you a part of our team. Like, isn't it illegal, or is the law changed?
Well, okay, yeah. Well, it's interesting. So,
shit,
it's
complicated. Isn't it? Oh fuck! I'll drink this
with water.
Why is everything so fucking complicated? It comes from the sun. God
well, with water, for example, you can't not.
Oh yeah, we're going to get into
well,
that.
if they run water past your house, right? If they run water past your house, then you have to pay whether you're connected or not.
Really?
Yeah. So if you have water tanks and whatever, and you're not connected to the water, but they run water past your house, then you have to pay water connection fees.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying if there's a pipe that goes through my front lawn that I'm connected to, that sometimes I rarely use, once a year because I got a water tank out back, you're saying that I get charged? You have to pay the full connection fee. So there's a connection fee or a network fee. So you're saying that we are all kind of living a Kardashian life without realizing it. Is that I'm not quite for this shit that we don't really need or involved with, and we're all just, it's fucking crazy, dude. That's fucking. Yeah, well, I mean, I think I recently went to a business forum, and yeah, so just because you run a business, you get invited to these things, and is there alcohol at these events? No. There should have been, but anyway, so all these politicians were in the room, and and they were saying, they were doing a roundtable amongst all the business owners, and there was an owner of a milk factory, there was an owner of a metalworks, there was an owner of a sawmill, there was, so there's a whole bunch of different industries, all sorts of different industries, and the things are bad here, guys. Do you have any beer? I'm gonna get fucked up on coke. My industry is dead. Well, no, but I mean, so here's the thing that came out of it was that everyone was just like, so politicians were like, we've got this funding, and we want to spend it and improve the community and develop the business and and everyone was like, every single business person sat there and went, that's nice, but what we actually really would want is internet, power, water, sewage, everywhere. Like, so that's all business was asking for, was basic infrastructure. So this got me thinking, like, so if all business wants is basic infrastructure, and all government's doing is basically privatizing it off to make profit margin, then all that does is actually is an impost and a tax upon every single member of the community. So, I mean, in my view, utilities should just be run on basically not-for-profit sort of basis. They should just be done. That's the concept. It should be done marginal, profit margin, very, very marginal, and it should be run at basically not loss, but it should be run for the benefit of business and the community.
So that's my political view on
So let's
renewables.
say I live in Sydney, Australia, Darlinghurst. I have a nice place, a big house, right? I come home at 3 in the afternoon. Where's my power coming from? Is it coming from Australia? It's coming from coal.
Well, I mean, as I say, 85% of our generation is from coal.
85%? So we're living in the So wait, when companies say that they so when they say America and Korea purchased American Australian grids, what does that mean? Does that mean our power is coming from Korea, or they just?
No, they're just buying the poles and the wires. So they're just buying the physical infrastructure: poles, wires, transformers.
But why would a company want to invest in poles and wires?
Well, because they know they're going to get a good return on their investment, I guess. I mean, look, businesses don't make. This is the thing about businesses is they're very rational, and they have their shareholders' interests at heart, right? So that's their primary goal in life is to benefit their shareholders. So they don't make irrational decisions. They don't. That's the reality. And their decision.
It's the humanity of it. It's the humanity aspect of it, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. It's coming from coal.
Sorry?
No. Hold on.
I was just trying to pick up my train of thought there.
All right, I've been drinking. Sorry, and I'm changing topics on you. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I can't remember. I've lost my train of thought. Sorry.
So what do you think the solution is in terms of do you think that there will be a second solar revolution in Australia, or do you think it's kind of coming back, or do you think that there's any chance of it returning, or will it be in other forms like wind farms and those kind of things?
Well, I think we're basically at the start of a massive uptick in the take up of or investment in solar. I mean, and let's just say investment in solar and storage. Okay, and it doesn't matter whether it's household or commercial operations. Ultimately, it's the investment decisions that people are making in the community, whether they're just on an individual basis or as part of a business or whatever. Everyone is making the same investment decisions now. So the investment decisions are really clear. So it had been a bit sort of uncertain, I think, in terms of, well, what was the actual benefit in terms of the savings and so on and so forth, and the efficiency of the panels. And, there's obviously a price of the inverters and all the equipment that's all come down as a consequence of the amount that's been put out there to date. So it's becoming more affordable. You can get a 6 kilowatt system here in Australia for $6,000 to $7,000.
And is that actually 6,000 to 7,000 at the end of the day, or is that like
installed? Yeah, installed.
No shit, yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually very affordable now, or becoming increasingly more affordable. We're seeing also there's quite a few innovative companies that are coming up, which are like one's called Sonnen, SONNEN, and they will for a flat rate of $30 a month. So all you do is pay $30 a month for your electricity. They come in and they install. You pay for the battery and the PV. You pay $30 a month, and then what they do is they come in and they network connection to this battery unit, and then they come in from the cloud and they remotely manage the battery in concert with all other batteries in their system. So what they can do there is they can use it in the same way that, say, for example, the Tesla 100 megawatt hour batteries, but they can do it in a distributed way across the network. So they can, get all these smaller batteries, like hundreds of smaller batteries, and make them act in concert. So they can go, okay, all of these batteries suck up electricity now while it's cheap, and then when it goes to a peak and there's a peaking demand or there's a hot day, all of those batteries can be programmed to dump electricity back into the grid.
Are you saying that they can essentially become their own energy company?
Yeah, so that they become what they call a virtual power plant. Virtual power plant. So it's just a whole bunch of small micro generation, being brought together using the internet, and then basically pooling all of those resources and together into one pool, and then being able to sell it as a service. So we're seeing that kind of stuff happening too. Yeah. So that's really interesting business model, and I think they'll do well out of that business model. As I say, the only real big downside here in Australia is the cost of getting or transmitting electricity from one place to the other.
Is that because of poles and wires, or
the poles and wires? So as a bit of background, Australia has the biggest connected grid in the world. So our entire east coast of Australia, from basically just north of Cairns in Queensland, running all the way down to Victoria, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, and Tasmania. So the island of Tasmania even is all one contiguous electricity grid.
Really?
Yeah. So it's one. Yeah. It's the biggest grid in the world, and it's actually called the biggest machine in the world. It is technically the biggest machine in the world. Yeah.
Big Googling this. And why don't we have a train that takes me from Cairns to Tasmania then? God damn it.
Good question. A very good question. I would like to know the answer.
I want to go to Tassie from Cairns.
Oh, I'd like to just have a train anywhere in Australia would be great.
Yeah, just to go to Brisbane. Fuck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, trains are interesting too. So I've seen your. I was just going to say, I was trying to remember the name of the. Got Madoff in my head. Bernie Madoff. Yeah. And he's invested really heavily into rail.
Yeah.
In America. So I think probably trying to get on the front foot of, I guess anything, at the end of the day, Amazon relies on rail networks and so on, right? So he's trying to get in at that route level. So interesting. But trains are 7 times more efficient to move goods than trucks.
No shit, yeah. Is that because they really stop, or what? Is that because, or?
There's less friction, so there's less loss. You don't have tyres running on road creating heat, and there's loss there. And trains typically have a better gradient, so they're usually on a flatter grade, so they don't have as much undulation in the, And so they're 7 times more efficient.
You find this out. How did you learn this? Where did you go to find this out? What? I've been driving for 30 years. No.
I don't know, man. I do a lot of reading in this area. Hey, I do a lot of reading just to keep up on topics and to know what I'm talking about. I mean, it's my job I sell knowledge at the end of the day. That's my job. So if I'm not knowledgeable, if I don't know more than the person I'm talking to, then they're not likely to pay me. So that's the way I look at it.
Question for you then, and we are coming up to our hour. It's up to you if you want to keep going for an extra hour, or you want to. Yeah, do you want to keep going?
Yeah, sure. I might have to go and get another beer, but
one more beer. But I got a question for you. What do you see being the big challenge in the future? What do you see being the biggest kind of problem that you're going to face in the future in terms of the business in Australia? And we'll give it a short break as well while we come to the hour, and then we'll come back and do one more hour if you want to. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's
all right.
Good, yeah.
So you need to use the bathroom. Go now, but we'll be back in about 2 minutes or so. Yeah, but we're going to still live stream. So, Arne, that's your question.
Are we just getting up and moving away?
We're just getting up and moving away, but you just tell me when you come back, what's the biggest problem you see in the future? What's the biggest adversary? What's your big Darth Vader of the industry that you feel is looming on the horizon that you need to prepare for?
Sure. Okay, nice one. We'll talk about that when we get back.